Ladies and gentlemen, Ali Binazir here with Russell Bishop, none other than the editor of the living section of Huffington Post. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
Senior editor.
Senior editor of Huffington Post. And he has his super secret book here. It's not even out yet. It's called Workarounds That Work, coming on January 10th to a bookstore near you. So I just finished reading this book. Great fun and super useful. So, from the horse's mouth, Russell, who is this book for?
Well, I wrote the book for people who are trying to get something done in life and overcome the resistance, the roadblocks, the negativity that gets in the way. That's just about everybody these days. You've probably experienced it. So the question really is, how do you create the life you want instead of the life you settle for?
How do you create the life you want instead of the life you will settle for? That's really powerful. And having read this myself from the perspective of someone who advises young folks, college people, and also an entrepreneur, this is really for everybody who's joined the workforce and has never been there before, because they teach you in school how to crunch numbers, they teach you how to run a spreadsheet, they teach you how to do some forecasts. They do not teach you how to deal with people and situations like having a really stubborn boss or having an expert who's trying to shout you down or something like that. So, the stuff in here is super pragmatic, super useful. That's what I really like about it. Now, what's important to people when you read this book? What's important for them to learn from this?
Well, I think, as you said, we all get our technical training. And in 35 years I've started 5 businesses, and I've worked for a couple of large ones. Hardly ever do we get in trouble because of something technical. It's usually about how people interact or don't interact well together. Hence the name workaround. It implies the notion that something broke and you have to work your way around it.
Right.
So this is how do you work around the stuff that happens every day, whether it's an overwhelming workload, a boss that doesn't get it, another team that doesn't get it, a process that's stupid. Things frustrate you all day long. So you can either be frustrated or do something about it.
Right. And a great part of the book are the stories, the anecdotes, the real life things that happen. And some of these breakthroughs are almost miraculous. So you have this company and the supplier, you have the aerospace company, and the supplier says, we're going to go out of business. We're going to shut down. And they're like, wait a sec, we need your parts. So how do you get that company to not shut down and give you your parts? To me, that's pretty miraculous.
Well, that's the notion of influence. And one of my favorite notions is that people do things for their reasons, not your reasons.
Their reasons, not your reasons.
And most of us are busy trying to convince somebody they should do something. And the easiest way to influence is simply find out what's important to them. How can you supply it? They'll happily come along if they get to win.
That's a great one. Also, a bunch of other snippets that I really like in here. How you frame the problem is the problem.
Big time. A good friend of mine started a natural food company just because he wanted to get natural foods. And so he told me that if he thought about that as a problem, then his mind would have filled with all the obstacles. Instead, he called it a puzzle. And puzzles have solutions. So his job was simply figure out the solution to the puzzle instead of being stymied by the problem.
Right, and just using that word changes everything. Puzzles are fun to solve, whereas problems are a pain in the butt. So that's a good one. Another one I really like was people don't like changes made to them, but don't mind changes made by them.
And if you're a manager in an organization, whether it's you're managing 2 people or 200, most managers are trying to control everybody and make them go someplace. It's a whole lot easier to ask them, hey, what's in the way? What would it look like if we got to the other side? How could you imagine fixing that? People love to be creative and involved. You just have to invite them.
Right. And the thing I want to emphasize is that Russell's being very modest here, but he's been through a lot of industries. He's been an employee, he's been a boss, he's been a founder of a company, he's consulted to huge, very powerful, super secretive companies, and so he's seen from the inside what works. And what he's giving you in this book is like the essence of it, like the Cliff's Notes of how to thrive in the workplace and how to accomplish the near miraculous when it comes to really tough situations that nothing has prepared you for. So in those terms, he's providing something which I think is very uncommon these days, which is common sense.
This book comes not from theory. This comes from down in the trenches, roll up your sleeves, get muddy, dirty, and messy, and figure out how do you move something. So if you're stuck in a muddy, messy trench, this stuff will show you ideas about how you get out of it.
I want to share with the audience at least one little snippet from the book that you really like. It seems like that part about control and being able to just being empowered. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I'm sure you know what that's like. There's so many situations that you feel you got no control over, and yet the real answer is I've got some, just not complete. So my favorite question in any situation is, what could you do that would make a difference that requires no one's permission other than your own? And if you can answer that question, you're going to start to get something moving. As soon as you get something moving, you can go to somebody else and say, hey, here's the challenge. I got it moving a little bit. Boy, we can move it more with your help, and people will want to jump in. If instead you go, hey, this problem sucks and it's your fault and you're in the blame and complain game, nobody wants to play. So what can you do all on your own? You won't make it perfect, so I like to say you can be directionally correct, you just don't have to be perfectionally correct.
Big distinction, directionally correct versus perfectionally correct. What is it? The perfect is the enemy of the good.
Absolutely.
So get her done. And that actually unfolded in a hospital setting, as I recall from the book?
Absolutely. The quick story was a hospital in deep trouble, their patient satisfaction scores, their patient safety scores, all of that stuff was in deep trouble. We had 450 people in the room. We simply asked them to make 2 lists. What could you do on your own? What could you do if everybody else cooperated? We told them to work on the first list for a month. When we came back later, the place was abuzz, and what we basically found out was 70% of the problems dissolved simply by people taking their own action on their own accord. The rest, now people were excited, things were moving, and they could sit down and jointly problem solve. It was great.
It just vanishes right there if you actually take control. So this is information that's invaluable to employers, new employees, entrepreneurs, people who are in management, basically every level of a corporation that you can think of. I think this is essential information from a very trusted source. So Workarounds That Work by Russell Bishop, coming in your bookstore January 10, 2011. Thank you so much for sharing, Russell.
Thanks,
that was
everybody.
awesome.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.